quickly, we have Tom Axworthy, who served as Principal Secretary and Chief Speechwriter to Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was president and CEO of the Walter and Duncan Gordon Foundation, which in part is dedicated to Arctic cooperation, Canada's North, and the development of young Northern Canadians. Tom is currently the Secretary General of the Interaction Council, an international organization addressing long-term global issues facing mankind, humankind, of course, so climate change being a major one. He's a senior fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs and at Massey College, where I'm also a senior fellow, and the Bill Graham Center of Contemporary International History, Trinity College at the University of Toronto. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Diane.
The first question, Julian and Tom, is about partisanship in politics. We have such demonization these days of people in other parties, and that makes it really difficult to work together to face huge challenges like climate change. How do you think we can get past this habit of bitter partisan attacks so that we can work across party lines for the common good? Tom?
Well, I think the first thing that has to occur is that in politics, you have opponents, but you don't have enemies. And that what unites people more, the men and women who put themselves forward for political office, which is a very tough thing to do. I'm full of admiration for anybody who does it for any party, but you do it for a concept of Canada, for a concept of a set of issues that you're in favor of. But that doesn't mean that everybody's wrong. There are a variety of interests. There are a variety of views. No one has the single holy grail of truth about every issue. So intelligent men and women putting themselves forward welcome ideas from other parties and hope that they have good leaders. When I began many years ago as a political assistant to Walter Gordon, who was the Minister of Finance for Mr. Pearson, very junior young speechwriter, he would send me to parliamentary committees not to do opposition research on the Conservatives or the New Democrats, but to see if there were some good ideas that we might incorporate or think about ourselves. That's a mindset that we need now. Our problems are so intense. We need the best from every party. We don't need demonizing of people because they're in a different party.
So, Tom, I think we all agree with you about that. What isn't clear is how do we get back to that? Tom, I know that there was some more of that in the past. You know, I started in the Ontario government in 1975, but even in committees now, there is so much partisanship. How do you see the way back to working together?
Well, one way is one reason why I'm here this evening, which is you look at the men and women who putting themselves forward. You look at the quality of candidates. You look to see if they had some breadth of vision, or are they reading notes prepared by some anonymous hack back in a party office. Do we have people who are independent thinkers and who are, parties are important. I've been a member of one for most of my life. We need parties to help organize electorates and platforms, but so are individuals. And you look for quality people in every party. And when we have someone like you, who's an exceptional set of assets and qualities to go forward, then that becomes far more important than whatever particular party affiliation one usually supports. Well, start with the candidate.
Thank you, Tom. The climate action that we need to, in a first past the post system, but particularly, we need to attract new supporters. So either people who haven't voted before, and in our riding, nearly half the voters didn't vote in the last election, or people who have a traditional party allegiance somewhere else. So how do you think we can, and that's hard for people sometimes to leave, to vote differently than the party that they voted with before. I've had one voter tell me, you know, the very first night he came to Canada, he was alone in a motel and saw an ad for the NDP and has voted for them ever since. How do you think we can make people feel comfortable, safe enough to vote for something different, given the crisis that we're in? Tom, do you want to go first?
Well, I think one of the first points is there a galvanizing issue that is more important than the old partisan attachments? And certainly in terms of the environment, but climate change, but also I want to mention, because I was so admiring of your work as environmental commissioner, the issue of water, safe, clean, potable water here in Ontario and indeed across Canada, threatened on so many fronts, that these are absolutely essential to life itself. And so that one way, which your party stands for and you do personally, is to try to get across the primacy of the issue that means the most to you. And secondly, I know we're talking about the realities of the 21st century now, but when you began, Diane, by talking about small parties and whether they could have an influence, if we look at history in Canada, there was the Ginger Group with J.S. Wordsworth, 4 or 5 of them only. And they were the people who persuaded Mackenzie King to bring in old age pension in 1927. And many other, I can give many other examples since. So sometimes it's not the number of MPs you have, it's the strength of your idea and your motivation and your ability to persuade, and around the issues of the environment. What so important for the 21st century, perhaps the most important issue for the 21st century, are children and grandchildren. That's the raison d'etre of your party and the raison d'etre of your candidacy. That's a very strong, compelling argument.
Oh, thank you. We've got one last question, this part of the panel, and I'm going to ask each of you just to be brief in 1 minute of talking about younger voters. We know that, this is University-Rosedale. There's a lot of university students. There's a lot of young people just out of university in the riding, and they have tended not to vote at high levels. And yet it's their future that's being decided on by, everything that we do today. So what's your message to young voters as to why they should bother to vote? What should give them hope? What kind of change can they realistically demand?
Well, I think that with young people in particular, but perhaps voters in general, one of the key things would be to see if you could get some buzz going in your campaign. Is it fun? Is it optimistic? Is it positive? Are you making things happen? So I think a two-step strategy for helping make that happen, and you may be doing this already. But the first is to participate in as many candidate debates as you can, and if your opponents will not debate, challenge them. Say, I'd like to meet you, and we're going to talk about this, and do this in different parts of the riding so that people understand that you're forthright, you're willing to debate, and this then gives you a chance for your compelling story. And the second element with young people and anyone else, it's an old campaign technique, but the key I often find is, can you persuade others who can have a ripple effect? That is the old idea of block parties. If you have some young supporters, can they have a pizza party with 20 or 30 of their young people to talk about? Can you have block parties to try to make your arguments that we've been talking about, the impact of smaller parties or how individuals can change? So one way to make yourself different from the direct mails and the social media, as important as those techniques are, be the candidate who will debate anybody, anytime, anywhere, and be the candidate that will meet in person with young people and anyone else who wants to invite 20 of their friends.
Well, COVID makes that harder to do in person, but it's really good advice. And thank you very much, Tom. Well, wonderful to hear all three of you and your optimism and your support. I am very grateful. I'm very grateful for your support, and I'm grateful for your words.
I'd like to invite Tom to share with us why it is that he is supporting Dianne. And Tom, what do you think we need to do to get more people to follow your lead and support Dianne?
Well, I guess one of the points that so impressed me about Dianne is that I'm a university lecturer, and her reports as an environmental commissioner were so expert, so well written, so much on the point that I used to use them in my classes as source material, which is rare for taking government documents. I mean, it was not only that the fact base was there, but they were well thought out and so well articulated. And so to have somebody who was such a superior public servant in trying to educate Ontarians about the tremendous issues going forward, when she made that leap to say that I'm not only going to write about it, but I'm going to try to change laws and persuade people and live the very hard life it is to be a politician today, that's when I know personally, when I talk about her being a superior candidate, it's not just her character and her background. I've seen her work as a public educator, as environmental commissioner. If she can carry that into the legislature, we'll have a tremendously strong advocate for a better future for Ontario and Canada.
I realized I also wanted to thank again the other endorsers that we have in the audience, and please feel free to say hi in the chat to identify yourself, but we really do appreciate it. It is 8 o'clock, but I'm going to ask one more question just because we did start late. And maybe Tom, since he didn't speak on the last one, would like to, of course, feel free to pass if you wouldn't. But there was an interesting question in the chat that has been on my mind too, which is how do we get people, and I think the question referred to voters, to prioritize longer term challenges such as climate change, as opposed to the focus we often see on short term issues and concerns?
Well, that's been a question of political science and political operators ever since Athens invented democracy. The only simple answer is really political education and trying to take, and this is one reason that Dianne is so valuable and her reports as commissioner were so valuable, to take these large ideas, climate change and the large macro issues that are hard to understand, and to make it clear what are the sinews of connection, and then how does it affect the individuals? What does it mean for you in terms of the possibility of floods going up and your basement getting flooded because of water issues, asthma going up because of pollution in the air, forest fires burning because of climate change and what that will mean? And so the way to get voters to focus on the long term is for them to understand what will happen to them in the short term if there isn't the kind of long scale perspective that you need. And that's what Dianne has done all her life, understanding the abstract and understanding the science, but bringing it down so that any voter can understand how it affects him or her personally. That's the way you get long-term understanding, is to have voters understand how the impacts will be on them and their children.
Thank you so much, Hugh and Tom and Julian, Salima and Brian. Thank you for helping make this a wonderful evening. I've cried a couple of times. I appreciate everybody's good wishes. I have to say that wishes aren't horses. Anybody who likes what I stand for, likes what we stand for. You got to help make it happen.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for the evening. Good luck,
Thank you,
Diane.
everybody.
Cheerio.